But let's begin this morning with President Trump's high-stakes call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and European allies. The virtual meeting marks a final diplomatic push before Trump meets face-to-face with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska on Friday. CBS News congressional reporter Taurean is at the White House and joins me now to talk about it. So, Taurean, what do you know so far about this call?
Yeah, Vlad, so we're still waiting on a readout of this conversation, but we know that this came at the request of Germany's Chancellor, a conversation to put Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelenskyy in the ear of the president ahead of his sit-down first face-to-face meeting with Putin since he retook office. The president over the past couple of weeks said he wasn't sure if Zelenskyy would be a part of the summit. It's now becoming more apparent that that's unlikely to happen. When asked if whether or not a trilateral meeting between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States should happen, the president signaled that it's likely unnecessary, but his goal here is to just get the conversation moving. The biggest concerns that we're hearing from European leaders and from the Ukrainian president is conversations around the lines of demarcation. Any conversation around territory, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy said should include his nation, which is why it's likely he wanted to have a conversation with the president today. The president, though, at a press conference this week, said that it is likely land swap will happen, but ultimately that rests at the feet of Putin, who he says will ultimately decide whether or not a peace deal is possible.
So how could this impact the summit on Friday, Taurean?
So depending on what happens during this conversation, the president could change his stance on this being just a listening exercise or whether or not he'll go into that meeting with the new set of demands. Right now, it's unclear if there was anything on the table, any prerequisites to sit down with Putin, but if Zelenskyy urges the president and the president listens, he could potentially say these are the demands from Ukraine. You could decide whether or not to go forward with that. That isn't the style, though, I should say bluntly, of President Trump. And he said it himself. He knows what a good deal looks like, so he'll ultimately decide on whether or not that's effective, Vlad.
All right, Taurean, thank you very much. Appreciate it. For more on this, I want to bring in CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio, who's tracking developments from our London newsroom. So, Ramy, what are Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and European leaders looking to get out of this meeting?
The mood picture, Vlad, it is one of concern. It's one of fear, and that even though Ukraine and Europe will not be represented at that table in Alaska on Friday, and we know that they want to be, they will at least try to guide Trump virtually right now to do what's in the best interest of Ukraine's security. And then if you expand that to European security writ large, one, to not believe Putin, and then two, really just to not sell out Ukraine during those talks. Zelenskyy, as you can see, landed in Berlin a few hours ago there, met German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. They may now be about to wrap up that virtual meeting with Trump as we're seeing a conference getting ready to happen. But along with other leaders of the so-called coalition of the willing, they have been talking. The UK, Finland, France, Poland, NATO, and the EU here. But we do know one thing that Zelenskyy absolutely rejects. From last night, he said again, stressed again, that he will not give up Ukrainian territory. On the map right now on your screen, about 20% of Ukraine's territory is occupied by Russia. And Zelenskyy was talking about specifically the Donbas region, those two regions in orange, highest up on your map there. Moscow holds almost all of Luhansk at the top and about 70% of Donetsk just below. But Russia's foreign ministry did release a statement today that said Moscow's stance for ending the war has not changed for more than a year, from June of 2024. That includes full Ukrainian pullout from those four regions you just saw on your screen that Moscow has captured. We know that Ukraine's allies, though, will be trying to guide that conversation however they can, diplomatically, I expect, but without him, they hope, reacting negatively.
All right. And despite the ongoing talks, the fighting, of course, continues in Ukraine. What's the situation on the ground, Ramy?
Yeah, the war continues. Russian drone attacks we're hearing overnight, and a Russian ground surge that's coming to light even more so today. The most recent update we've got this morning is that Russia launched about 49 drones into Ukraine overnight. Russia says that it shot down more than 60 Ukrainian drones since last night. And now what we're seeing on the wires here is Russia's army claiming more territorial gains along eastern Ukraine, again, in the Donbas region. This video you see here from Russia's defense ministry purportedly showing its soldiers holding up Russian flags in a village that they claim they've newly captured. But we've been seeing these claims come out for at least the past few weeks. Russia claiming other villages. Ukraine's President Zelenskyy did say that several spots have been captured, but they won't give up the fight. He said that Russia will use those as what he said was a bridgehead for even more attacks. And going into these talks on Friday, he said that potentially Putin is trying to use this as a win, a series of wins going into this talk with Trump to say, hey, Ukraine is losing, Russia is winning, this is our upper hand. But Zelenskyy is saying that, talks without us, his quote, talks without us will just not work.
All right, Ramy Inocencio reporting from London for us this morning. Thank you.